Here it is, the 1934 America's Cup Endeavour yacht. It's all complete and finished. The last couple of details that I had to add were the coils of rope on the deck to represent the ending of all the rigging, which I had just left thread coming out and cut it short. This enabled me to cover that and simulate that the rope continued and ended up in a neat coil on the deck. The way that I did this is the following way. These are the last details of the ship. What I'm doing now is to make coils of rope from the thread that is provided with the kit. To simulate the end of all the rigging and the ropes that come from the sails, and cover up the ends that are on the deck. So to do this, what I've done is to take various lengths from the string, about 6 centimeters to about 10 centimeters, and this way I have different sizes of bundles of coils. And to do this, what I'm doing is grabbing a piece of masking tape and sticking one end to it, and carefully doing this around itself so I can make a coil, and the masking tape lets me keep it in place as I wrap it around itself. I keep on doing this until I have the whole length taped down. When the whole string is wrapped around itself, what I do to hold it together is I grab a brush, small brush, and I dip it in a mix of water and wood glue, and dip it around and make sure that I cover the whole rope very well. And this should hold the whole coil together, avoiding that it unravels on itself. Again, just a little bit. This will be the underside, so even if it dries transparent, it will still have kind of a gloss finish, but being on the underside, it won't be visible. So once I do that, I wait a little bit for the glue to become transparent, and I hold it down for a couple of hours with a coin, and I just hold it down as I did with the other ones, and then when they are dry, I can just take them off, and with an X-Acto knife carefully push it underneath to unglue it from the tape. This way I end up having a little coil of rope, and here is all the rest that I have done. I've done about 21 of them, and some of them I will just put one on top of the other to simulate longer lengths, and others I'll just keep as they are, and this is the final detail to add to the ship. So once I did that, I put the coils in place with a little bit of super glue and just gluing them on the deck. The next final step was to put the other rigging of the bobstay right at the top. I had only added one side, and now that I had finished, I decided to add the other side, although in the instructions it's not clear. It does call for the bobstays in pearl, but it only says on one side, not specifying which one. And since there was a ring on each side of the mast, I finally decided to add the other one to create some symmetry. Those were the last details to add to the ship, and now it's complete. So now that it's finished, I would like to address some of the changes. I would have liked to do some things different. Because they have led to some minor mistakes. The first one would have been the masking. The masking that I used didn't stick very well, and when I added the spray paint of the blue and the white line, some of it oversprayed and went underneath the masking, especially at the stern. And it was pretty difficult to clean up, and in some parts actually impossible. I think that what I would do the next time is to use more masking tape and to add more varnish to stick the edge of the tape better, and that way avoid the overspray, especially since the deck at the stern and then the bottom part of the hull aren't painted, and therefore the paint stains do appear pretty clearly. The next one would be actually the varnish that I used. The one that I ended up using was a cheap no-name brand, and the result has been that on the white of the mast and the boom, it is starting to yellow out a little bit. I think this would have been avoided by using another type of varnish, and that would have helped out. Finally, regarding the rigging, when I added the rigging for the boom, I glued down the ends of the rope. And the problem with this is, as I've been handling the boom to add the main sail, the rigging has loosened a little bit. What I would suggest to do is to not glue it in place until the sail is completely in place, and then that way to have the possibility to tighten it a little bit more, since it will require a lot of moving the boom when adding the sail. Finally, the sails, I miscalculated the size of the mainsail a little bit, and therefore it is not completely tight, it is a little bit bowed in S shape in the middle. I would recommend to test fit it a number of times before finishing it and adding it to the ship. Finally, with the sails, since I basically made them again, I would have liked to use a thinner thread to simulate the stitching. since they are pretty prominent now with that size. I think using a thinner thread would have been a little bit better. And this goes as well for the rigging that I use to attach the sails to the ship. I used the thread from the kit, and it is pretty bulky. I think using a slightly thinner thread on that would have also worked a little bit better, and it would have been less noticeable and being able to hold the sails just as well. So those are really the main changes I would have done to the building of the ship, and all the rest I think worked out pretty fine. So with that, I think it's a point to review the kit itself and see how well all the pieces of the kit came together. So this is everything that's left over after having finished the kit. There was plenty of wood to work on the kit. All these are the different strips which are left over from the first planking and the deck planking. This is the strips left over from the second planking, and this is all that's left from the extra pieces to make the boom, the mast, the rod, and various other little pieces. This was just a sample mast that I used while I was building, and it used up the half moon rod that was provided. So all this is plenty of extra materials, so the kit had plenty of things to finish it. And these are the frames where all the keel and the false deck and everything was on there as well. The main part that is left over is all the little accessories that were used as cleats and two-leg eyes. The only problem in the kit was the one-leg eye that there was not enough of them. There was one missing. But I think that seeing that there are plenty of pieces of the other parts, that must have been a little mistake. There's still plenty of plastic for the windows that there was more than enough, as well as thread. Even if I used different thread for other parts of the ship, I think that what's left over would have been enough had I only used this thread to make the whole ship. The only other little piece that I never used was for the deck planking, the stern piece. Since mine was shaped slightly different, I was forced to make a new one, so I just kept the original. I think it would be very hard that the original would always fit, since with the sanding and all that, each ship will be slightly different. And for that, all I did was to use part of the original piece and cut out one little section to make the new one. It was pretty easy to make. There was plenty of little pieces as well left over from the different planking, and even pieces of metal from the different pieces, which was very long, and I just cut them down. So the kit itself comes with plenty of material, and including the sails, which I never used, having substituted them for something different, but they were very useful to make patterns. So aside from that, these are the plans. The kit was very well made. with just some mistakes. For example, in the plans for the mast, some of the measurements down at the bottom were not correct, so I had to change them, and some parts didn't have any measurement on them, so I had to measure them from the plans. One thing to be careful with is that the plans are not exactly one-to-one, and therefore you have to be careful when measuring them, because although they seem that way, they're a couple of millimeters off. And for the rest, the plans are very straightforward. This view is actually perfect one-to-one scale, since I was able to photocopy this and use this as a pattern to make the holes on the deck and the placing of the different structures on it. Another thing which was different was the little diagram right here of the pieces that are laser cut. The pieces for the false deck and the cabins, they didn't match exactly with the ones that came. So it was not hard to match up the numbers, but slightly different. I'm assuming that they're just different versions, and this one was previous, and then the cuts were made differently. As far as the instructions are concerned, they were pretty clear. There were no mistakes basically on them. They were very easy to follow, but somewhat simplistic. So therefore, for a beginner, it might be hard if they've never made a ship before, since the instructions go by very quickly with the different parts, such as planking. It's just a rough diagram with a little paragraph telling you what to do, and this could be kind of complicated for a beginner. The only major mistake was the one of the bobstay, that it was not clear if to use one or two, but I think in the end it really meant that it had to have two, one on each side, and the instructions just stated one, both in the original Italian version and English version. Aside from that, it was pretty straightforward and easy to follow. So this is the final overview of the ship, all complete, and going from the front, all the details added on the deck, including the rigging, the coils, all the deck furniture, as well as the accessories as the wheel and the winch. Everything is now added on. This is the view of the bare wood at the bottom, and finally the mast and the boom with all the sails added and the rigging to keep it in place with the handmade sails. Finishes the model, and I think that with this it is about 1,300 pieces in total, and about 2 years work. Thank you for having watched the videos, and hopefully this series is helpful for anyone that will make the ship in the future. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and if I can, I'll help out, and hopefully you have enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next build.